Oh, 9 o'clock already. And being 9 o'clock, call the meeting in order, pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance by the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Okay. We have had a agenda submitted to us, and I believe there's an addition, Allison, from Donna.
Yep, so there's one addition and that will be an action item. We'll add it as number 4. And it's to consider resolution number 2308. And that's establishing a ballot board for absentee for the 2023 Merge Township election.
That's the absentee ballot board, it says here.
Yes, board.
Anything else to be added to the agenda or changed? Entertain a motion with the adjustment. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? I'll second. Discussion? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. Approve previous minutes from January 7th that we. So moved. Greg, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. At this point, we have open opportunity for public comment. Anybody wish to address the board? Dave, you're on later on, aren't you?
Yeah.
Anybody to address the board? Nobody on the screen? Moving on to appointments, approximately 10 o'clock, we'll be meeting with the TDG staff, reference to the space utilization. Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. We have 3 items on there. Entertain. I'll make a motion to approve it. Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Going on to action items. First one to be consider approving resolution 2307, resolution. Excuse me? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard somebody. Resolution to submit, adopt, and implement the WinLAC Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan with the WinLAC Mississippi Winona La Crescent Management Plan Joint Powers Agreement. Come on up and tell us what you feel there, Dave.
Wonderful, thank you. So yeah, two action items here. One's the first one there, that resolution. So that basically states that you'll become a partner and that you'll implement this plan. So Dewey's been on the board. It mirrors what Eric does for the Root River Watershed One plan. So it's a just much smaller area than the Root River. There are 10 partners involved, 4 counties, 4 districts, City of Winona, and a watershed district. It's about 480,000 acre watershed compared to the Root is 1.3 million. Out of that 480,000 acres, about 5% or 24,000 acres are in Houston County. It's that little, the Pine Creek area there. What's that?
How many? 23?
24,000. So on our side of the line, our treatment is actually pretty good. A lot of structures, a lot of hay rotation, a lot of waterways. I see our workload, more stream bank improvements through Pine Creek area. Yeah. So, if you folks of Houston County wants to become a partner in this, which I believe you do, we'll have to take action on that. My board took action on the 8th, so we're already partners. So, if you decide to make a motion, you'll have to make the motion contingent on Bowser approval. So all 10 partners are going to be signing the resolution and the agreement, and then Bowser's gonna take a look at it, review everything. They'll approve everything. We've already gone through all the paperwork. At that time, you'll become a partner. And then we're already looking about getting funds this summer. 577,000.
When you say funds this summer. Is that matching funds or just straight up?
Straight out.
Is that-
Matching, matching meaning there'll be some landowner match to it. So typically, like the Red River, it's 90% wash share
For practice.
for practices. There is some capital gains practices, like the Klinsky structure down Creek, that was 100% wash share. With several partners involved, including the county.
I guess what I'm driving at is what's the county's liability? As far as cost to be on this?
Just your time and quarterly meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no. There's no.
The only reason I ask is we're the bottom end of this thing, so if there's a major. It's all coming to Houston. County.
Right,
Before it
right.
goes to the city.
Much like the
We could-
River.
we Could be subject to the biggest. Like the river.
Yeah, we're the bottom of everything.
The word river comes out of another watershed that's not involved with Winlac. It's involved with.
It's a separate one.
Separate watershed. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, he's talking about coming from.
You know, down.
So is there money? So is stream bank restoration priority in this plan?
Yes.
It is.
Yep.
I know Dan was a little disappointed that it was.
So,
Did they change? it?
yeah, Dewey, do you know the particulars about that? So there's 3 priorities, A, B, and C. And it's in one of them. I don't know if it's in the B category.
There was some discussion when you did that meeting a couple weeks ago, at my absence, did they even talk about that part? Didn't talk about that.
The public input on
That was the plan. Yes, there is some restoration of banks, but I don't know the qualifications per se.
Yeah,
You know, as you take a look at that map, as you said, it covered 4 counties and our sliver is very small.
pretty small.
We're involved because of the coming off of Northridge and coming off of off the ridge, stuff like that. So
Well, the only reason I ask is that, Pine Creek is a winding creek.
Very
And it's-
flashy.
Yep, flashy, and there's a lot of cuts, and so I think it'd be I would like to see it be a priority to help restore those banks.
Yeah.
But I know it's a fine line in how you do it.
Yeah, and I've always hated priority areas with the volunteer program, and if a landowner's willing to do something, we're willing to help out. You know, it's just the way it's done.
well, some of that was quite evident in the flood of 07, when it came through that area, some of those
Yep.
winding banks chewed up.
Really took her.
Oh,
Yeah.
got a lot of things done there, so that. Get this straightened at 500,000+. Is that dedicated strictly for that area of Winlac?
It's the whole watershed. It's 570,000, and it's good for 2 years.
For the whole watershed, not. watershed.
Right.
I wanna make sure.
We're not talking.
Ooh, no, okay. Now we're a sliver of the big pie.
Right.
6%.
Yep. So, but I think like Commissioner Johnson said, I think they should have priority of helping get some of those straightened out. Quite familiar with the creek all the
Yeah.
way back to Winona County, New Hartford area. I guess the resolution request is that we approve the agreement with being part of Winlac.
Contingent on Bowser approval. Like,
What's the feeling of the board?
Oh, I think we should be participate.
Motion back?
I'll make a motion, we approve the Winlac
Resolution.
watershed resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion to approve resolution number 23-07 contingent on Bowser's approval.
Good. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carry.
All right, the second item is the joint powers agreement. This is how it's going to be governed. It's the same exact way as Root River. It's an agreement. It's not a board. They'll make policy recommendations, pay the bills, all that stuff. So if projects come up in the Winlac area, I take the applications, I set up the cost estimates, plans, everything. My board approves it.
So you're the fiscal.
Yeah, River is actually the fiscal in this one.
Yep.
So,
Because Fillmore County is, isn't it? For the Root River?
yep,
Yep.
we're the day-to-day plus fiscal, and then we're the fiscal for this one, and then Winona County's the day-to-day.
All right.
Sure.
So is that a separate resolution or is part of the same resolution?
It's it's an agreement.
An
Separate.
agreement.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Again, contingent on Bowser approval, late March.
Feeling of the board.
We got the one we almost have to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the joint powers agreement with the fiscal responsibility being through Root River dedicated through Fillmore County.
I'll second it.
Greg? Further discussion? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carry.
Very good.
Got it covered. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Let's get that.
Okay, number two on the action is consider approving Icon Construction LLC quotes for bridges 28-512, 28-538, 28-530, 28-531, 28-510, 28-515. These are bridge numbers or contract numbers?
These are bridge numbers, so each year we go out for bridge maintenance quotes. We send it out to multiple contractors. This year we only received quotes back from Icon Constructors LLC. So the work this year is for some surface finishing, rehab of some deflection joints, sandblasting, priming and painting of some piling. And so on these 6 bridges. So our estimate was $114,075. The quote came in at $117,100, so slightly over our estimate. Which was actually nice to see. A lot of years we toss in a bunch of bridges, we get quotes back, and then we need to toss a bunch out to get down to our budgeted amount. So this year it comes in real close to what we have budgeted.
So a while back, you approved for purchasing sealant for some,
Yeah.
this is separate, right?
This is separate from that. Yep. So
Okay.
we'll take that sealant and do some
bridges.
bridge decking around some other bridges. Yes.
Okay.
So 117, what was the bid now again?
Yep. So the bid came in at $117,100.
Very close to the estimate, so. Very close. Feeling of the board.
Make a motion to approve the Icon construction quote of $117,100 for all those bridges.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry.
Greg, second. Further discussion? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carry. I have a question while we have you here. That letter that was sent out, can you explain what this 0.4 foot deal is?
Yep, so to forward on to all the commissioners, I think that, so FEMA, mailed a letter, I believe that, Commissioner Myrie is gonna be getting it in the mail, so they emailed it out on Friday. So before that, bridge down at Freeburg was replaced, there was, essentially it's the low water over or lower crossing. It was, dry except for during the rain events. The old structure essentially consisted of, it's a small, narrow, one-lane bridge, essentially like box culverts, where you drove right on top of the pipe itself with how it was set up. So it would overtop during any type of rain event of any magnificent scale and stuff or size of event. For that area is zoned AE in FEMA, which means that they have really good data on water level impacts down in that area. So usually that zone is isolated to urbanized areas. So this isn't within an urbanized area. This is quite a ways upstream of Freeburg. So if you've driven down in this area, the new bridge is really big. It's, I believe it's probably the biggest bridge on that section of on the stream all the way through the creek, all the way through. The reason why it was that size is because we tried to get the 100-year rain event all goes underneath the structure, it doesn't overtop the roadway. So when you do the hydraulics, with the zone that the mapping is, the water level is not supposed to increase at all. You need to match the pre-design or lower the water upstream and downstream of the structure. Well, the only way you can really match it 100% is to put back the identical structure that was there. We went through a process with FEMA. I believe US Army Corps was involved. There was a bunch of different entities involved, and we could have submitted a $8,000 plus application, and that is just the initial application fee. Any review fees gets added on top of that. Plus, we have a bunch of consulting design fees that get submitted. They say that the original CLOMAR conditional letter of map revision application fee is going to cost the county over $30,000. Then you go through and you construct the project, and then afterwards you spend another $8,000 for another application fee. You go through and do a bunch more application or engineering work. You have a bunch of consulting fees. You have additional review fees on top of that, and you get the official letter of map revision. So you essentially go through this process twice to get the same end result. Meeting with the other agencies, we were directed, and the DNR issued a permit to not go through and do the conditional letter of map revision because of our impacts being so minute. So with the new bridge, there is essentially a hydraulic jump just downstream of the existing structure, where at the structure or 20 feet below the new structure, the water elevation is 0.2 of a foot lower during a 100-year event than what it was prior to construction. Another 20 feet beyond that, the hydraulics says that the water is 0.4 of a foot higher. And this is all just pasture land in that area. So it has a little bit of a drop, then it goes up higher. Then another 100 feet downstream of that, it's back down to the same elevation. So it's not like we're backing up water a long way upstream or downstream. The water with all the other areas is either identical or goes down slightly, just because of how the old structure went, how that water flowed over the old bridge during the rain event. It ends up being this little section of less than 100 feet that the stream is 5 inches higher, 0.4 of a foot higher. Pasture on the side, you have banks going up. It really has no impact. Landowners have been notified, letters went out to them, no comments, nothing received back.
Have you taken into account the Crook Creek watershed project there?
This does not have,
Doesn't have
and I
included?
did bring that up to our consultant, that there's been a big
Yeah.
Detention basin built upstream of this, which would lower that water level down even. So once that's taken into account, the water really might be down less than that 0.4 of a foot over this 100 feet or less section. If we broke it down, it's going to shrink down less than that even. So this is a consultant reviewing it on FEMA's behalf. They sent us a letter saying, hey, it appears that we didn't follow the correct process because we didn't get the conditional letter of map revision. We were directed that way after really this was meetings that took place over about a year's time. I mean, we have documentation, some emails, stuff that took place. I know that so it's at least 8 months apart and there was stuff going on beyond that. So a year's time, maybe even a little bit longer than that, that we talked about this and it was determined that no conditional letter of map revision was needed. So now we just need to get FEMA to review it and see kind of all the discussion and get them to say, yes, there's no violation. You know, we, in all essence, follow the process except for spending $30,000 of unneeded money up front.
We've got, looked like, or sounds like going through all the process, you had permits pouring from after, built it, it approved the bridge. And we got a little stretch there, you could send the cow through the creek a couple of times, it'll dig out that hole or whatever that high spot is. I mean, Mother Nature made that, we didn't make it. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can even look at, could we go out there and potentially reshape the channel slightly or something to get that, the change. I mean, there might be something we might need to do to get everyone to agree that, and actually, to be honest, if you look at the map, if you don't look at the individual stationing stuff, and the subset broken out within those stations, if you look at the actual map with where they have the lines on the map, the different elevations, the map itself actually does not change. So we're making a letter of map revision for a map that does not change.
Well, hopefully we'll come to the conclusion that it wasn't needed.
Yep, so
There's probably somebody new from FEMA that's, there you go.
yeah, so our consultant is saying, let's not make a big deal out of this. At this point, we think it's gonna get resolved pretty quick and easily. Just needs to get that meeting with a higher open FEMA, so when that meeting is set up, I'll probably invite, I don't know, invite the full board or invite subcommittee to go and attend that meeting to listen in, so.
Well, when I read that, I was thinking, okay, 4/10 of a. I don't know, 3, 4, and 5 inch, what? I mean, the Mother Nature did that, and now you give me more information that says before it's okay, after it's okay, and there's this hump in the root, in the creek.
Yeah, so if this was zone A, the water could go up half a foot. You can design to go up half a foot for a significant length with no issues. It's because of this has this urbanized modeling of a stream in a rural area.
Freeburg is urban.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So everyone was surprised that it's even in this, that's modeled to that
Well, I
level there in this area.
didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I saw that over the weekend here reading it and I. What? It has nothing else to do apparently. That office or wherever it is.
It's the type of letters you don't want to receive at the
Well, I
afternoon,
understand.
Friday afternoon. But
As I want to bring it to the attention that we're. Look at it.
yeah, so and really, that was why we had, so many of these meetings on this discussion and that submittal, and everyone said, for that type of expense, for such a minor, small impact, it wasn't needed, so.
Letting create it. Letting goes get out there and move it down here. That's all it did.
And we had some of those discussions too, is that every year, every few years, you get that rain event that's moving that sediment around in that stream, and that if you go and do a survey now, it's going to probably show a different result than when it was built, which was different than when we did the original survey prior to construction, which would have been different than we did the survey a couple years prior to that. So that river or that stream is always changing, so.
Well, like I say, keep on top of when it's set violation, that's a flag to me. So, want to get any of those things.
It's a flag to me too.
Thank you for the explanation, Robert.
One question. What's the status on the bid process for the parking lot in Washington?
So that is advertised, bid opening scheduled for 11 a.m. on February 27th. So the city of Caledonia project has a bid opening, I believe, of February 24th. So we're a few days after the city.
So you will have something maybe coming in on the 28th, for our approval, or would that be too soon after they bid?
It'll probably be, well, potentially we could, we'll see what comes in, you know, how the numbers come in and what we look at, we might, you know, really see how we want to present as far as, do we recommend
It'll
them
be
doing
March.
everything? Do we want to potentially have the county do some stuff? So I would say probably the week or two after that.
So you can review it. Full detail. Very good.
Thank you. As long as you're here.
Yes,
Last Friday, you met with the DOT on that 21.
yes. Yep,
They-
so.
They seem fairly receptive. We thought.
Yes, so we submitted for a grant application to
This
for
is a federal grant.
this is federal transportation alternatives funds to pave the shoulders on County 21 to have 5 foot. In the meeting, they recommend that we actually do 6 foot paved shoulders for essentially bicycle usage and stuff. So our application was for just over 1.4, I believe it was 1.44 million for the cost of the additional pavement. Out of that, 80% would be funded by, or up to 80% would be funded by this federal fund, so 1.1 million and some change. So I presented our proposal to them, referenced, I believe it was at least 6 different documents of where that Root River trail was discussed, or plans showing, you know, someplace between Trunk Highway 16 and our CSAH 21 corridor. Those plans didn't designate any specific location, just says this is the corridor that we'd want to have that trail put in. Submitted it to the group, presented it to them. They were much more receptive of using the shoulders for that usage on this roadway because of the traffic volume being so low. Much more receptive than I anticipated them being. So that was good. Really the questions for the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes really started leaning towards if they fund our 11 miles of CSAH 21 to pave that, how do people get from the end of the trail at Houston to our CSAH 21, or the other end over by Holka to get from there to Holka or La Crescent. So we're kind of doing the middle section without having the ends figured out first. So they would like to see, you know, those end connections happen. So if we don't get funding, we might want to talk about, do we want to apply again, try to get the details worked out at the end, or if we do get funded, you know, we want to, you know, get those end sections connected. Stuff that kind of got brought up is that the bridge on Trunk Highway 76 does not have paved, or it's the fog line essentially is right over by the railing and stuff. There's no place to ride bikes or walk outside of the roadway. Same thing over at the Houston end, you had wide paved shoulders, but that's on a really high traffic volume roadway.
So are they, but do they realize this is just a section that, you know, it's all gonna take, you know, phases to do it, to get
Yeah.
it complete?
Yep, so I told them, I said, you know, this has been talked about for decades, and I showed them the plans dating back to, I believe the first one was like 1991 or something, and showed them all the plans and the phase that this is this makes good sense on the timing front, because we're gonna repave a roadway. Now is a good time to add that paving cost, come back and do a standalone paving project for the shoulders. The cost is significantly higher, so they do understand that timing wise, it makes sense. But then they have those concerns on the
Right,
end, so
understandably.
so yeah,
So are you gonna get an answer, you think?
yeah, so they're saying the answer is gonna be middle of April. So I might be able to get a better idea in the middle of March, depending on if they have an ATP meeting at that time and discussion of stuff. So, but their official answer is supposed to come out in the middle of April. And at that time, I'll come back to the board and I'll talk about, do we do that project? What happens on the funding side? If we don't get funded, do we switch to a different road? Do we pave this road? And then at that point, we can start doing our maintenance activities on which road we get ready for 2024 paving.
Well, thank you for pursuing that. I know Allison, you helped a little bit with poverty studies and stuff like that to make us qualify.
Thank you. That was good information to have.
Okay. Okay, anything else for the engineer while we got him? We got something else to ask him about.
Well, I have a little discussion with you guys. You want to have it now? He needs to be involved in it. It was, they're contacted by the Freeburg Catholic Church down there. You know where that all is on
Yep.
49, you know. They've had some trouble this winter with people going off the road and down into the cemetery and wrecking shit. And then they had another place in the front sign that somebody slid into it. Knocked the hell out of that. So they were wondering if we could boost some kind of guardrails through there or something.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
they,
something we could look into, or?
yeah, so they did contact me on that. You know, my response on that is, so guardrail creates its own hazard and its own safety issue there. And if you look at the crash history in that area, there's really not a significant history of people driving off the road in that area. Now, I haven't talked to law enforcement, see what happened this past winter as far as people going off. I haven't seen any reports come through saying that, and my traffic data only goes through the end of last year. So, and that was just updated. So anything that happened in November, December, maybe wasn't even available to me up until recently. But, and then when you look at, okay, so their concern is someone's going to drive off the roadway, vehicle's going to go down the slope, get into the cemetery, maybe damage headstones, and get a vehicle into the cemetery, which no one wants. From a roadway perspective, that area of roadway is no different or no worse than what it is both directions from that cemetery. The road's fairly narrow, there's steep slopes. So from a road safety standpoint, putting it there is no better off putting it down the road or up the road. So from that standpoint, from a road standpoint, doesn't necessarily make any sense. So does the county want to spend resources on that section right there? Personally, I don't think we do want to put it there for some potential location. Someone could potentially go off the road someplace else and hit a house or a tree or something else. I do understand their concerns, but it's just not an area that I think that we want to start putting money at guardrail and maintaining that. There's other roadways that have more traffic that have probably more safety concerns from a road standpoint than there.
Well, probably a lot of them don't get reported down there either. They're probably drunk when they go in there. We don't follow the cops. They call Bundy and they get pulled out, and that's where they go.
Okay.
Not every accident gets reported or crash gets
That's
reported.
right.
Absolutely, they don't. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you don't want to have a vehicle leave the road and go down and damage headstones. But that road has been there for decades. It's been there for a long time. And I haven't heard about some significant history of it happening all the time where vehicles go down there.
They just said they had two or three this winter. Most they've had, but
And of course, we had some icing issues this year too. That was different from other years. So it's a combination of lots of things. We agree, but there are a lot of spots in the county. If we start putting it here, by the way, put it here.
yeah.
I haven't been down that way recently, so I guess.
Well, they just asked. They
Yeah.
just brought it up.
Yeah, and I can definitely pull out the reports and find out, was it a driveway that was impaired? Was it a roadway issue? Was it a speed issue? What was the factors behind it? And try to get some more information about that. And
Well, they shouldn't be driving too fast on that road. It's kind of a curvy road anyhow. You wouldn't want to be 50 miles an hour, not too bad. Maybe people gotta slow down.
Driver error. I think we educating that driver error.
a lot of inattentive drivers out there too. So
Anything else for the engineer? Okay.
Nope.
Thank you much.
Thank
you.
Number 3 is consider approving Winona County, Houston County Professional Services Inter-County Agreement in which Houston County will provide feed, select feedlot. That's how it's right here. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Morning.
Morning.
So I was contacted earlier this year by the feedlot officer in Winona County. And they will be going on medical leave here for a portion of the late spring, early summer. And so they were wondering if we would be willing to help out with a few of the duties. I guess as you guys, so with the delegated feedlot program, which we have staff in-house to handle the routine inspections, emergency response feedlot permits. And so that's basic, I guess, basically all the components of the feedlot program. What they were looking for assistance with was just feedlot permitting and emergency response. And so they've asked that we fill in or be the contact from the period of March 1st through that of June 30th. And so then this intercounty agreement is to reflect the duties that they've asked us to help out with on that period. Anybody have questions?
And all the compensation rates are been agreed upon and
Yep. Yep, and Sam has worked with their attorney on some of the language in this contract.
Finalizing you. So,
I make,
go ahead, it's a two-way street, I mean.
well, yeah, they
them,
helped us,
us.
they helped us out too. So
You were
I
pretty
make
safe.
a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Winona County for feedlots.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Further discussion?
One question, just, you know. From a workload point of view, how bad is this gonna hurt you?
I guess I knew this in committing to it, that it may require time outside of our, or of my 40-hour work week. And that's what, I
It
mean,
depends on
if-
emergency calls
yeah, I mean,
and feedlot permitting.
yeah, it could end up being nothing, or I don't.
Yeah,
She wasn't aware that there were any permit applications potentially coming in,
that's what I was gonna ask.
but I guess that
Yep.
usually you have some knowledge of something, of a project coming down the line, but that doesn't mean there won't be anything.
Just to clarify that, then how long, when somebody gets a permit, how long is that good for?
It depends on the permit they're getting. We have 60 days to process it. And then if they're looking for construction short form permit, that is 2 years. If they're applying for an interim permit, which is generally used for pollution kind of mitigation issues, that one's for good for 2 years, but then there's a potential to extend that for another 2 years.
So you going to review existing permit would probably not happen that you could, that they can tell right now.
No, it would just be any incoming applications.
Okay. So it sounds minimal.
Incoming and emergency.
Yep, right. Yeah. Everybody clear on the motion and so on? And we got a motion second, further discussion. There being none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And number 4 was added on, it's 2308, the absentee ballot, board, was sent to us by our treasurer auditor. Donna, any comment?
Good morning, commissioners. Comments, just the fact that, per Minnesota statutes 203 B.121, that it does require us to establish a ballot board, and this is for the township election. So, this is the only election we are going to have this year, so basically, that is what it is, just to get the ballot board set up for that.
Questions, Commissioner? No. Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 23-08 with regard to the absentee ballot board.
Is there a second? I'll second. Bob and Bob, further discussion? There being none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Anything else for action? None? Discussion time? Carol, you have anything you want to add at this time before we go into Commissioner talk?
Right now.
Not right now, okay? And I believe we're gonna have the phase utilization people at 10 o'clock.
That's planned.
That's the plan, okay? You have anything to add before we go into our comment? Okay. I'll start, I guess, at the Public Health Advisory meeting last Tuesday after our board meeting and a lot of discussion about, data analysis on the, the opioid and so on, so we're getting information through Olmsted County on that. Discussion again with the loss of, Pine View and just kind of needs of home care, people going in and helping people that can't be alone anymore, so that's kind of was some discussion. Later that day, Eric and I were involved with the TKDA review. I think it was chapter 3 and 4 we went through and are getting finalized in that. And our next thing will be in March that they'll bring back. I'm gonna have Allison kind of comment here in a bit about the childcare gathering we had last Tuesday night. I thought it was very well received, a lot of comments since. I think it's an important issue, both for our employers and employees and the community at large. It's something that's needed. I see it on a personal basis quite often of people scrambling when school is out or even a friend of mine talked about, they're planning on having a child around the time that they have an opening. I mean, that's, it's getting pretty bad where you have to get that far in advance thinking. And then yesterday I spent the day up in Rochester, with the emergency communication point, and I brought up to Andy earlier that one of their hotspots is that cybersecurity, and they keep commenting that you see something that don't look right, that ain't right, don't click on it. And I know a lot of information that way. Deputy Olson and Sheriff Sweatberg were up there also from the RAC group. Finding all these acronyms in the back of the book, 5 pages and all this stuff. They're on the RAC group and I'm on the ECB thing, but a lot of points. We had all 12 people who are part of the Southeastern Emergency Group there, representing their different entities, and cybersecurity was the hot topic. New generation 9/11, it was a hot topic. Homeland Security, the guy that spoke on that. Technology is just scary. You really look at it beyond just what's going on and the cyber connections and so on. And then last night I had an opportunity to go to the City of La Crescent meeting, and the highlights there, I missed the hottest topic about some roads in the Northern Dakota community, but that was done before I got there. I guess they're most excited that out of Weezer Park is getting a new pavilion. They're to $500,000+. So that's their news of the days. Guess that's kind of what I've been doing the last few days. Seeing the world. Mr. Johnson, what you have going on?
Well, I too went to the childcare event in the Crescent last week, and it was a good event. I learned a lot myself. Talked to some caregivers and what they feel would help in their situations, providing childcare. Training seemed to be a hot topic. There's a lot of training required. It would be nice to see some help with that. I understand the core team will be reviewing all that stuff and taking all these ideas in and coming up with some recommendations for our ARPA dollars that we're committed to that. So, other than that, I didn't have any other meetings. Had a land use meeting this morning, discussed several things there, but nothing that popped out unless Bob wanted to bring something up. That's
BB&B.
Bob S.
Robert and Bob will call. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Robert, I let you have.
Okay.
Service talk coming this morning.
All right, I can handle that.
Thank you.
Last night, I went to a SEMCAC meeting in Casson. So that's an hour and a half drive to go to a 2-hour meeting and then an hour and a half back home, but I did take the county Jeep, so. Getting used to that. Biggest thing about that, the conversation about their ongoing projects, grant writing. They are in the middle of putting together their grant applications. They've had a lot of turnover in personnel, so they're kind of behind the ball on some of their grant applications. They're working Saturdays and Sundays to get them done. So they can submit them on time, but they're getting them done. It's just kind of a struggle. And then this morning we had the community meeting, the community services meeting. Rob reported that the old van got sold, that he got a little over $9,000 for that old van. It's kind of an unbelievable amount. And he's taking training for the new laws. He's planning on attending the national conference, which is in Minneapolis this year. He's never gone to the Veteran Service Officers National Convention, and being in Minneapolis, it's never going to get any closer. And La Crosse has a new CVSO officer, and there's a lot of people contacting him about the new regulations and new possible benefits with regard to the chemical exposures that the veterans have been involved with. Then we had a talk with John and Karen. We talked about the emergency designation for COVID because of COVID is coming off of SNAP, the supplemental nutritional dollars that they get. There's 440 SNAP participants or cases in Houston County, 584 healthcare cases, and 1,354 METs or a different type of healthcare. In the case of the SNAPs, those 440 people, and some of them in the healthcare get it also, but on those 440 people, the range of SNAPs money that they get goes anywhere from $75 a month up to $1,100 a month. And it's based on family size and income. But when eSNAP ends in February, their last payment's in March, and it's just cut off. So there's families that for the last 2.5 years have been getting this eSNAP, the emergency monies, extra, that all of a sudden will not have anywhere from $75 to $1,100. I mean, $1,100 is the extreme end. But if you use a $500 average a month, that's going to be one heck of a change in their income.
But that was enacted for COVID.
Right. It was enacted.
It should have been clear that it was going to be temporary.
For sure, but it's been 2.5 years, so
It gets
forget that temporary part, and we depend on it now. It's not gonna be a pretty scene, I don't think, as far as when that change comes, because it would have been nice if they'd have gradually diminished instead of just, you're done. And there's new changes coming from COVID to new training involved going over from COVID to non-COVID statuses. John talked about the CBD THC ordinance update. He's not had very many calls regarding the moratorium and the sales in the stores and the gas stations and the bars, no licensure and whatnot, but he hasn't had a whole lot of contact about that. Talked a little bit about the Pine View closure, Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Human Services. They have an ombudsman that deals with it. The state keeps shifting blame on how this could have happened. But they're chasing.
I think the Attorney General, State Attorney General.
Well, they're giving them information, but anyways, the state they're chasing the owner. They're after the owners for the fines and the penalties, but there again, you get them. They're trying to figure out how to prevent this in the future. One of the problems now, there are several issues. I mean, the private accounts that the nursing home residents had for hair care and their personal needs, the dollars that they were spending, trying to get that back. Then when the outfit sends them the check, it bounces. So there's all kinds of happy news as far as this is concerned. We also talked about children placements as far as the legal issues. If there's a legality or a criminality issue, if it's a mental health issue, if it's foster care, and all the different requirements and things that they go through with that. one good piece of news was there's COVID grant monies that they received. Houston County share is $335,000. Now, it was initially intended to offset the cost of vaccine clinics. We didn't have a great deal of cost in that vaccine clinics because we had a lot of volunteer help. We did it at our Four Seasons but that money can be used for other things like public health infrastructure. So we do this talk with regard to the study on building use. There's a potential that we could use some of that $335 for the public health portion of the redesign of the courthouse or whatever we decide that, decide 300, how much? 335,000. But that can only be used for the public health portion of it as well as vaccine portions, but it has to be public health infrastructure. And they have 2 current openings. The nurse case manager appears to be a successful search. They're doing their backup and checking on background checks and what have you. And then an adult services manager is still open until March 3rd, as that position opened when somebody took a lateral move for the child protection office. And I don't think I have anything else to tell you. Nope, that's it.
Thank you, Robert.
I just wanted to point out that because of that E-SNAP going away with emergency order, that we did hire an extra case aide to help with that transition, so.
I just wanted to tell you how many and kind of what kind of dollars we're talking about that people are. All of a sudden, I think that's going to be a huge increase as far as what like Semtech and get people coming in for food assistance. Each other at Semtech and all of it.
That's it, Robert. Mr.
That's
Schultz.
it for me, thank you.
Not a lot they had, just on that childcare training, the keynote speakers are really what they were put together there. Top notch job, I thought. Information.
I love your Fargo wax.
And then I was at the land use meeting this morning, seeing nothing really drastic came out of that. There is some funding out there of a grant for noxious weeds, weed control, but trying to get people to apply for that some of the townships might be able to take some advantage of for a sprayer and things like that. It's up to $5,000 per equipment.
Is there gonna be anything along the like the river deal that they did with the Japanese?
You'd have to ask Amelia. That's usually, I don't know, that's probably gonna come up. Yeah, spraying noxious weeds. Yeah.
She did have a deadline of March of anyone.
Yeah, and Mayville Townships looked into getting some of that grant money for a sprayer. I know they've been contacted Houston Township and how they did theirs. And Amelia's in contact.
Yes. The letter went out that our clerk got.
So if a township purchases sprayer, do we have to get a pesticide applicator to run it?
It's gotta be a licensed applicator. Houston Township had to hire a licensed applicator.
That's it. Okay, Mr. Meyer.
I guess all I have is Tuesday night over in the Crescent. That was an awesome deal. We did a nice job. Got a couple meetings coming up this week. Outside of that, guess that's all I got for now.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up too is last week's discussion talking about that canoe ramp. Or the Eagle Scout project. And I should have stated this, but that individual was turned down, denied from the DNR to do that project, so that's probably why he put another project.
It was denied.
That was denied.
I got the impression it was still.
No, that his project was denied. They felt it was too big a project for an Eagle Scout project. So I just wanted.
Well, last thing to tell you. Yep. If you take a county Jeep. When the light dings that you need gas,
It's true.
they real close.
It's
I was chugging.
Look out for the ding dong, right?
You couldn't go to gas in the back, I think, yes.
Not with
Well,
a Jeep.
whoever, I know who drove the Jeep for me, but only had half a tank.
Oh.
I made it up and almost back on a half a tank. So
We had a nice segue for Allison to give us more info on the childcare.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for coming. I think some of the biggest takeaways are that in the age 0 to 5 category for children, we are short over 200 slots in Houston County. So yes, that number is sort of staggering, but it's good that we are working on it. The number changes depending on how you look at it. If you look at zip codes, if you look at cities, but it's definitely, we're short over 200 slots. So that being said, there were a lot of good ideas that came out of the meeting. We had a good turnout of people. It really showed that the community cares about it. People are thinking about it. And the core team is meeting again in March to try to come up with some solution. Like you said, training is a big thing that came up. So the whole point of this is trying to increase slots and also support our existing providers. So, and after the event, I've had several people call me, email me, text me with additional ideas. So that's really good. We're going to look at all of that information coming up, I think, on March 1st.
Good. Anything else to add? There being none, we can move on to the, I already asked about closing public comment. No, I didn't. Closing public comment. Anybody wish to comment before our 10 o'clock meeting? See anybody in the room and look, anybody on the screen on Zoom wanna public comment? There being none, we'll go on to moving into our 10 o'clock appointment. I believe one of those on the screen is that. If we're supposed to meet with.
Could we just take a recess until 10 o'clock?
We could, yeah. Like a. Stand up and.
Or wait a minute, we right here.
There we are.
when we say 10 o'clock, it's gotta be 10.
You're early. You're early.
Okay, I thought, okay, I saw somebody in the hallway and I wasn't sure. Okay, space utilization. Good morning, welcome. Utilization study. Yeah, go ahead.
All right,
Good morning.
Morning.
thank you for having us. I'm Joanna Harris again with Collaborative Design Group.
And I'm Tamara Wiley,
I'm gonna
Collaborative Design Group.
go ahead and share the screen here.
Take a moment, get your stuff ready. That's fine.
No rush.
We're not trying to rush you.
Andy put the presentation already for us here, so.
I think we're gonna get printouts, but
Oh, yeah, Tess was making some printouts too, so,
So she's bringing stuff over.
I
Okay.
know.
yeah. Okay, should we wait?
All right.
We can wait.
I believe this study started before Commissioner Coe joined us, but it's look at parts of the buildings and best utilized spaces and consolidate or whatever ideas might come out of this. They asked all department heads their input to their needs and coming up with an idea that would benefit the employees and us as a whole and the customers of Houston County.
Looks like you're gonna give us a short review of that too.
Great summary, though. Yeah. Really, today will be more of a progress update. It's our first round of the data collected and presenting that to you with some initial draft concepts, so.
So this will be one of many or one of?
Well, it depends how much you like what you see today. But it will definitely be one of probably, I would say, 2 to 3.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
All right.
you have the floor.
Thank you. So like I said, I included this slide, it was directly from the RFP we responded to about what the project purpose was. I don't need to read through these all, word for word, but really we were looking at 3 buildings in this study. We're looking at the historic courthouse building, the Justice Center, and then the, County Community Services Building on the highway. So first, oops, I skipped a slide here. So from the project purpose, we took and developed some guiding principles to guide us through, all the data we were gathering from each department. And, as Commissioner Severson stated, we have met with every department within the county and interviewed them, with some general space questions as well as job functions, daily flow, confirmed all the number of staff. Also talked about future needs with them as well, whether future needs for staff would increase or decrease, to making sure that we're not just planning for currently today, that we're also looking out at least 5 to 10 years, but also even 10 to 15 years out. So if you do make any space changes in the future to your existing buildings or space, that it's not something that's just an immediate need, that it really is flexible to develop into the future. So some of the guiding principles I think that are really important to point out. So not only optimize the use of the county-owned buildings, provide a central location for county supplied services, enhance and improve the public and client experience, and then also optimize space use and daily efficiency for staff. So which also then increases the staff environment. So really looking at the staff side of things, but then also how do the clients that you serve and the public that you serve work within your spaces and your buildings as well. A couple of the bullet points below are some of the things we've looked at as we've analyzed the space, how that could possibly happen. So co-locate departments and services that overlap. You'll see in some of the existing plans when we get to them, there's some spaces where people have just adapted to what they have, or they've moved into space and it's maybe more space than what they necessarily really need. And if you have more space, you're going to use the space or you're going to fill it up.
Yep.
Eliminate spaces that are duplicated to create more of a one-stop shop. So spaces that are duplicated are maybe duplicated because they're not right next to each other, or there could be certain adjacencies where certain departments could share that function. Right size job functions, again, a lot of that is looking at the square footage to the number of staff within a space, what the daily functions are for the staff, and then also how do the clients interact with the space. And then just reduce on-site storage. Storage is definitely a challenge for the amount of storage that are throughout the county buildings we discovered.
Is there a lack of storage or too?
Too much.
Too much stuff that's stored that may not, you know what I mean? They have to be cleaned up and maybe scanned, processed.
So one of the documents we create is called a space program. And it is the spreadsheet here that I don't want to spend a lot of time right now getting into the detail of this. We can come back to certain aspects of it later if you would like. But to really point out here, throughout our process of collecting the data and looking at existing floor plans, walking through existing spaces and such, looking at the different types of rooms and daily functions, we create a line for each department. And then you'll see that the columns here have the current staff, projected staff quantities. And then as you go to the right-hand side, we get into the existing square footage, and then we do have some concepts today that are very much in a preliminary draft format, but we would like to walk you through those today as well. And then you can see the difference in square footage from option 1 to option 3. And then on the very last column, we show what we show the proposed, if a department was proposed to move locations, we show the building.
So from one building to another.
Yeah, so the current building to the proposed. And the next few pages are just a zoomed in detail. And again, if you don't mind, I'll just skip by that for the moment. One thing to maybe note on this page I'm showing right here is the current total staff as about 150, and then proposed for just 5 years, 159. So not a huge increase anywhere. This slide was just really to show, I know you're all very familiar with your own buildings, but just to show the county campus here location, and then the community service building a little bit remote location from the county campus, I like to call it. So this just enlarged, again, our study itself is really only focusing on the Justice Center, the historic courthouse, and the community services building. And then you also have the old jail sitting on this particular campus. And how much time do we have today? I should ask that before I started.
Hour and a half.
Okay.
Is that enough?
That's great. So now I'm gonna go through, and Tamara, jump in here when you want. We're gonna go through the existing floor plans within each building. And we've identified again the departments by the different colors that relate back to that spreadsheet that I was showing earlier. This can really be an interactive. If you guys have questions as we're going, please stop us. But we'll go through all the existing plans first and identify some of the things that stood out to us. And then we'll get into some of the proposed concepts, really going back to those guiding principles. So we're starting with the historic courthouse the building we're in, and this is the lowest level, so the basement level. For reference, this is north, the west entry over here, and then the south entry exit, I believe, is really an exit only, but this area or this exit is very convenient for the surveyor's office, which is in the purple here. The colors on my screen are a little different than what they're presenting up here, pretty good to how we wanted to identify them. On my screen, it's a little different. So if I keep looking back and forth, that's why. But they identified this as a great location for them because they are out in the field a lot versus on site. The space is connected to a lot of storage spaces. They have immediate storage here, but their storage does overflow into some of these miscellaneous spaces as well. So one of the challenges of the building, we'll talk about a few different challenges throughout the study, but this building in particular with a lot of the old vaults and a lot of the really thick walls, some of the spaces, what you have is what you have without doing a lot of structural work to make those spaces bigger or manipulate them.
So the spaces down there won't really change. It's just the storage within the vaults is what we think we can reduce and work on.
So this area here is what Tamara was just referring to. So the hallway, when you come, maybe I should start from the main, this is the elevator. And if you come down those stairs and come through the hallway, this hallway basically has vaults on either side of it. And then if you go in this vault here, it connects to all these other vaults. It's a pretty cool space. If you haven't been in there, you guys should go in there. But our discovery was a lot of the stuff has probably been in there for many years, and there's obviously certain documents that need to be kept for a certain number of years. But a lot of that, after a certain number of years, could either go either off-site somewhere or could maybe be eliminated if the documents are scanned in. So that's definitely one of the things we've identified to really maybe evaluate and dig a little deeper into some of those storage things.
Yeah, like a first step to the challenge of the process, changing the process challenge. That makes,
That vault between the election records and the facilities workroom, is that utilized?
We couldn't get into it. That
that's a
was,
locked
one-
vault.
That's the one you can't get into.
We cannot get in there. So
Nobody,
there's
can get-
treasures in there, we think.
so nobody can get in there?
Not that we know.
I'm not aware of any
Okay,
ability to get in there.
It's not the treasurer's, the one to the right of the election records.
right.
That's not ours. That's not the treasurer's or auditors that I'm aware of.
That's
She
auditor.
said it's full of treasures.
No,
Not the-
no,
Like a treasure chest that the gold, we got gold in there.
That's our mystery room.
yeah, I don't know what's in that vault. I don't have a key for that. I could,
Nobody has the combination.
I could find out. I could do a little research on it, I guess.
Well, let's find out if it's anything in there, get a locksmith. I mean, that's another issue,
I
but
mean, I've walked by it for years now. I was always curious what was in there.
Yep.
okay, well, that's.
Yeah, it's still a little, we, we looked at the storage down there. It's still a little mystery because it's very packed, but that's part of the process is let's scan this, let's take a step forward and kind of work with it just because that's a future type thing, right? You know what I mean? That helps the future. Putting in money now helps the future down the road. So
I guess I'll ask my question as, while we're still on this page. I see these miscellaneous storage areas. So who has control over that room? I guess, has that been determined? Because some of it could be utilized by one or the other, but all of a sudden you got 4 departments in the same storage and whose mess is making the messier?
that's the challenge right now.
That's the
I'm not
challenge.
sure
is.
if there's if that's fully determined or if,
Yeah.
and maybe it is, but we need to find that out, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that was, as I'm looking at it,
Yep.
I didn't realize it was identified as miscellaneous storage. Okay, who has the key and who is in charge? Tess, I believe you have an answer.
These are rooms that are used as previous years as work rooms and miscellaneous storage by maintenance, surveyors. I believe IT has materials in there when we decide the location.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah,
4 in there.
It's not that the parties aren't getting along, that's not the point at all. It's just that we would run out, for instance, ceiling tiles may be in there, there could be carpet tiling in there. That kind of thing.
It just kind of popped up as I saw it and I'm thinking, well, is there? Do we want to get into the point to start dedicating where this is preliminary, you know, that's what I'm just thinking. If it's connected to the surveyor's room, he has access to it before somebody from the sheriff department bringing something.
Yeah.
And that changed storage to something else.
Correct.
Yeah, keep that in the back of your mind for right now. There are a couple of nice big work tables in this particular room here. And part of it, being a draft format, lack of not really knowing who to dedicate that space to is the reason for labeling it miscellaneous storage. But there was 3 to 4.
Access to that room is through the surveyor's office.
You can, there is a door right here. As you come down the front, I like to call them the front stairs, the historic stairs.
Yeah.
And then through the surveyors as well.
Oh,
This is
okay, yeah,
open
all right,
right
yep, I
here.
see that, yep.
Yeah. Surveyors is really separate, but there's like 3 rooms that
I
all
didn't- I didn't
connect.
catch it.
These all connect here and yeah.
Yep.
And they're more storage spaces, not really departmental
they have little
suites.
windows.
They really are storage type space, though.
Okay, well, I guess we're getting bogged down in that. Again, it's preliminary.
Yep.
But it just kind of stuck out as miscellaneous. What does it mean?
Okay.
Thank you.
The
Great questions.
one thing, just to point out here, the break room is a little, the configuration of the break room, without having a better way to say it, is a little odd. You could go down a ramp. The sink is like right as you walk in. Again, I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with all of these spaces, and then you walk down a ramp. And so it's not a full kitchenette type break room, but definitely enough space in here to sit down, eat your lunch, microwave. We've discovered a lot of departments have microwaves or mini fridges within their departments as well. And so just something, again, something to keep in mind. The big conference space down there is very nice to have that big space that can be opened up or divided. Although it did not, at least from our initial data collection, it's up to us. It seemed a little underutilized for having that bigger conference room space. Some of the uses right now are by 4-H, license testing, but it definitely could be a nice flexible room. It just not a lot of need for that really big conference space. And then another smaller conference room on this floor, or I should call it medium size, 348 square feet, is pretty decent sized conference room. And then 2 of the adult and children's services for public health and human services. The mechanical room, obviously, there's certain spaces that will be off limits as far as probably, changing, mechanical room being one of them.
And IT.
IT spaces will point out as well. But this miscellaneous storage here, this 591 square feet, you'll see in our proposed concepts, looking of taking over that space. Right now, it's pretty full of very miscellaneous storage. The majority of, or I'd say half of it, is maybe human services. But then there was also a lot of other files and things in there from other departments as well.
And like condensed filing, which may not be needed for that type of use anymore.
Many of the departments, even in the newer Justice Center, with the big high density unit storage that, you can crank and move the units, as things are going less and less paper, or more and more paperless, that some of those may not be needed in the future. But I think the thing that was identified is that there's nothing in place right now to bring, like as a county, to bring in and have documents scanned, where then you could get rid of some of those storage systems. But that's something to think about in the future, where it could be free up space, because those take up a lot of space. Again, it's the whole storage factors.
Yeah.
So now we're on the first floor of this building. And again, this is strictly identifying existing spaces. So the north end of the building, again, public health and human services occupies quite a bit of the space here. This is also where, for this building, the main check-in and waiting area is for this department. There are restrooms on this end of the building, which is nice to be convenient for them and their clients. They have a lot of families and adults and children coming in for all of their services. The IT spaces right here is the IT, whoops, sorry, this mouse moves really fast on me. This is the server room, which also has at least two staff working within that space, which works pretty well. The IT department identified, and obviously that server room would be off limits for moving. It would be a very expensive thing and unnecessary. This is a IT office here, which you actually, we'll get that corrected in the future plan. There's a few steps that you go up right here to actually get to this office. So not necessarily handicap accessible, but works great for the current.
It's great for Andy.
Great to the current director.
Yeah,
Is Andy
he's
here?
He likes it.
So as you, again, the elevator and stairs, excuse me. So then the recorder's office in this space here, and they do have a walk-up window here. One of our observations about this space, and I realized that some of our observations were not gonna make friends. So that's just part of our nature of our job, but our job is to identify the things, right? And then it's your job to help us identify and create the appropriate solutions. So, but this particular though, and again, it can be just the way that people have had to adapt to their current space and the existing conditions and the historic building. But the customer window being here where
The
the
first one off the window, yeah.
sorry, right here. Yep. But then the actual workstations and workspace are back here. So I can't remember exactly, but a couple of departments even use cameras to see if someone's walking up to their window or they have bell systems. But then you're getting up from your workstation to actually walk into this room and service the counter. The other thing is that the recorder does the passport pictures still, so you go over here to start with for passport services, and then you'd come into here to get your picture taken. So that is within this space, but otherwise back here.
It's not really
it's-
used.
It's underutilized space in this area. There's definitely public access that has to be maintained in the recorder's office for the public records. They're primarily back along these back walls. They're very well organized department. It was, very easy to see everything they have within their space. This is the recorder's office, and then this particular room was not
was like a
necessarily an
file room.
office, right?
Yeah, it was just used for filing and then they had a scanning station, but again, it's a
The
very
scanner
big
station.
room. Just a lot of volume that they have that could be reduced and be more efficient if things are closer to each other,
Yes.
because you're not kind of walking across the room to all these places to do one task.
And there, we're missing a doorway here. This is actually connected. I think you can go through this elections room to get out.
Oh, can you?
So-
And you,
Yeah, they have like a secondary exit.
So then all the way over to the left side of the plan, the auditor treasurer and the license center. And again, they're pretty spread out here and have, for the ratio of the staff to square footage, not including the license center, but the auditor treasurer has the most square footage per staff of any county department. So, and again, it could be the nature of how they've had to adapt to their space. Ideally, if the license center, I think, wasn't separating them, there would be less duplication of some daily activities and functions. The treasurer, within the treasurer space up here, there's also the mail room for the whole building as well here. And then these, where it says 111 square feet and 135, those are actually old vaults as well that are being used for storage as well.
So the
Yes,
audio and
anything else?
treasure have two different service windows. That's
Okay, thank you.
so that's like a big
Here.
duplication, right? And then you've got all of the work type tasks, right? You know, you've got your copiers and all those types of things that if they were just in
Printers.
one spot, there's a lot of space that's condensed into one. We also think that the license center and audio treasure might have some sort of staff overlap. So those are things that we have to look at too, is this departments where they're spread out, and if it's better, if they work so close together, do they need to be closer to each other?
So I think what Donna might have mentioned was sometimes they have to cover for each other.
Right.
It's
Or
got-
vacation or illness and.
Yep.
And then the license center itself, I think they're using the space within here pretty well. If there's actually 3 stations along here and then a smaller quick station for like hunting and fishing licenses on the end. And then there's 2 staff within this space servicing those stations. The thing that could maybe be a little more efficient, and I think it was a product of COVID, is that you sign in at the window, then you come in to the space. So like the flow isn't as great or efficient as it could be. For that. Okay, I'm gonna keep.
Signing at the window.
Get you. Yeah,
Yep.
we did actually see some people waiting down there today.
That hallway can get quite full sometimes.
Yes, so we want to work on that too.
Right.
I'll just keep going unless you guys have questions or other things. So now we're on the second, again, this is still existing space. but the second floor of this building. So as you come up the historic stairs, the room behind us here is this conference room. It still has the two smaller restrooms and then the room we're in, the county boardroom. Behind that here, we have the commissioner's office, and maybe you guys could even tell us, is that space doesn't look like it's ever used, but does anybody ever use that space?
We had it as an administrator prior to my time, so that was an office there, and back in the old day, that was a judge's chamber there.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see what's happening on that, so.
Mhm. I look, looking
Yeah.
at some of the original historic plans, there was even staircases that came up to some of those judges' chambers. It's pretty cool.
Quick escape.
Back door for the judge.
Yeah, exactly.
The finance area here, adjacent to us, again, I think it's the nature of some of this existing conditions and the way some of these rooms are built out. But they're there's two staff within here. It's kind of awkward when you come into the space. You don't quite exactly know, do I go to this office? They have a small printing area set up here. So it definitely, they're reconfiguring, I think, could make the flow and efficiency a lot better. The privacy in this area was good for finance, and they don't have a ton of interaction with other departments, although they get people dropping stuff off. Yeah. Again, across the hall here, we have a small little break area. Not necessarily a full kitchenette again. This used to be a restroom, but it has a refrigerator in there
In
now.
there now, a refrigerator and sink, so.
And then the EDA office, and then HR has some storage in this space right here in the restrooms. And then as we move to the north side of the building, it's the HR offices. Again, a strong need for privacy there if there's staffing issues or other needs. HR is also doing the interviewing for the county to have access to smaller conference rooms or spaces to do that private, interviewing for hiring and such, or overseeing that.
So that's the interview room at the top left there.
This is actually the office. This is an
No, I
office.
know that. The other one.
This one.
No.
Within the
Next
space,
to the HR office.
so,
I mean, right
That,
there.
right there.
It's not, sorry.
so we have a little bullet point right there that it's on a window, and right now we believe it's just used for storage. Maybe it could
Okay.
have been an interview room in the past, but that's just kind of what we observed, so that's kind of one of those things that,
So the
it's
interview
great real
room is
estate.
guest's office.
what
I
was the
think-
question?
Interview room, there isn't,
So we use
The conference.
this conference room.
that's what I thought, okay.
Yep.
No, that's okay. Thank you for clarifying it.
Yeah, we just had a comment of, it's kind of like the best real estate, the best square footage. So it was like that room is used for storage right now, we believe, you know what I mean? And it's on a
Yep.
window. So it's
Yep.
like just reworking,
Yep.
let's get the best
Yep.
for staff and for client experience.
The same, we'll see the same situation in the assessor's office. Their storage room has nice windows in it. So then again, our next human resources, we have two of the departments for public health and human services again. And then across the hall is environmental services and assessor, which actually work pretty well being next to each other. There is some interaction between departments there. One thing that's slightly awkward on this end of the building.
Yeah.
So in concept, it's a great idea to have this multi-axis printing area. It has the big plotter in it. It has, you're not paying for everyone to have certain printing services within their department. However, confidential information is getting printed there and public is walking through here. Well, I think they have to ring a bell and then get let in, and then they go through here to go to environmental services. So again, it's just not a great flow of, and then the first person within staff within environmental services sits about right here. So there is a little bit of a sight line there, but again, I think they might have even had cameras in this situation here, but it's just not ideal. And there's a huge built-in here that, again, it's the circumstances of existing conditions, but the built-in is pretty much wasted space. So this, if you wanted to demo that, take that out, you can reconfigure the space for better flow.
Yeah.
A couple comments within the assessor's office. They're probably the ones with for the amount of staff that they have, the smallest square footage, but it's still adequate, I think, like numbers wise. It's just more the layout. So this, again, this room right here is storage, but it has windows on it. This line looks, oops, sorry about that. The line right here got moved. This space right here is actually 2 offices. So the assessor's office is here, and then the rest of the offices are appraisers. One of the appraisers right now does not have a private office and sits in a workstation behind admin reception. Their reception area is pretty tight. So you come in the hallway here and there's no real waiting space. The only issue they talked about is if all the appraisers are meeting with somebody either on the phone or in person at the same time, is just the noise privacy. And then one of the things to further assess would be within all departments,
Yeah.
do people really need private offices, or can they work in more open workstations if you can deal with the acoustics and the sound privacy of it and the privacy needs?
I would say one thing that's unique about those 2 departments is clients actually come into
Oh,
their
that's right.
space and meet with them like in their office. So like a lot of the other ones we were looking at on the other floor, clients come to a service window and they stay there, right? And then they don't really come into the space. But some of these departments really should have a place, their own private window, and then maybe like a spot or 2 for them to wait within their suite. So it's kind of like how clients use department spaces is another secondary look at spaces as well.
Now we're gonna jump to the community services building. Again, just identifying the existing space there. Mostly this is the public health part of PHHS. And then we have veteran services and extension services in these 3 offices, veteran services here. And then the open space here is really used by both, mostly I'd say extension.
Yes, because they have an admin.
There is an admin location right here, but there's a big work table out here. That's also used by extension to lay out space, but veteran services, the director for that oversees this area here. And then veteran services also uses the garage for their accessibility van, and transporting people. The couple things about this building, I would say the sound privacy is not great in this building. The walls are not as thick, and a lot of these walls I think were more, I don't really want to call them demountable walls, but they were thinner partitions. The access to the building isn't bad. There are ramps to the building. However, the parking is more limited. So I think staff actually mostly parks across the street in Quinlan's.
Yep.
And then another thing about this building is the whole lower level of this building is storage. And there is also a break room down there, and there's additional restrooms on the lower level.
Mhm.
There's only stairs to get to it, though. There's no elevator within this building. So you'll see when we get into some of our initial concepts and thinking about rearranging space with one of the focuses, if we can combine the public health and human services department, getting them out of this building. I think we feel there are ways to do that. However, the storage is the biggest issue. So if the county really needs as much storage as this lower level has, which is 3,000 square feet, that can't all move with the staff.
Yeah,
And
then right sizing each department as well will help with getting them all over to this building.
Any other questions on this? We just have
Are
the
all
one.
those offices utilized?
So they are, they're mostly the public health nurses and social workers, and then there's the WIC program has a couple spaces, and then there's the health education, like it's actually more of a clinical space. And
I think they use some of that clinic for when they have shots or something. What's
yeah,
that?
they do vaccines. and
Vaccines.
shot.
And then one thing about the WIC right now is they still have like a 6-foot distance that's put in place.
I think that that's for
In
all
person.
public health.
Yeah, is that all that? Yeah.
Yeah, there was, so for example, someone I think is
You have a question?
in one of these office spaces where they can't get. So public health has gone to still keeping a 6-foot rule if they're meeting in person with clients. And so they have to meet out in an open space where they can have more of that 6-foot spacing.
That's, did you have a question?
Oh, or is that-
Comment. My understanding, although I be verified, my understanding, 2 officers are dedicated officers on this campus. These are co-located.
Thank you.
Yes.
And
Like a department head.
another thing that was noted is,
And one staff member.
Okay.
So John,
Yep.
and then one staff. I was just also gonna mention that, currently not all the WIC services are in person. They're still some are still virtual, but, it sounds like that's gonna be mandated by the state when they would all go back in person.
So there's a lot of things could happen out here at the community service building with these rooms, maybe enlarging or making it more private. Like I said, privacy is one thing that I noticed since you said it. I mean, that because of the thin walls and some of the things we're dealing with public health and so on. I guess we're, like I said, we're jumping the gun maybe in my thought process here, preliminary, I can remember. We're getting information, what we're doing today.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so the last building to talk about the existing conditions is the Justice Center. Apologize here, these seem a little bit lighter, so hopefully you guys can see that. The lower level here, they do have the emergency operations center, which is also a multi-purpose conferencing space. However, if that was in use by emergency management, then that is not available for other uses. This area, we identified it with the sheriff's department back here because it has the locker rooms. But there's also some IT spaces, I guess, that got colored with the sheriff's department. But this room in the corner was identified as an actual IT staff room in this building. It's not currently being used for staff. However, it could certainly be the IT department in general was open to that if needed, or it could potentially be used for something else. And then Tamara, do you remember these
So the
two
rooms,
storage rooms?
there was like a radio
Radios?
room, and then next to
Radio
that was
storage.
like the gun room, you know, the weapon.
This is weapons.
So a lot of storage down there, and then there's the locker rooms, evidence storage, and then the evidence room, basically evidence processing. And then just a lot of mechanical and storage down there.
And then this is the public lobby.
Public
With
lobby,
the
and
restrooms and the elevator.
correct.
And facilities has an office here too. I think we forgot to color that in.
Yeah, so majority of that is mechanical and facilities.
On the first level, now we did not color in the jail space on the first level. Or the public area to orientate everyone. Here's the main entry to the building. And as you come in, each floor has this, well, first floor and second floor have the nice public corridors here. So if you come in that main hallway, and it has the stairway that will go up to second, and then this open atrium. On first floor, if you walk straight ahead, it's the jail visiting area. And there's the sheriff's window with admin, and then there's the jail administrator window, which the jail administrator window really isn't quite used like it was designed to be used. The jail administrator sits back here a little bit. And there's a temporary workstation office right in front of that window right now. That's actually someone from the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
I think that's where they're putting
The two new deputies share
Yeah.
that space. Okay. So this salmon colored area for the existing sheriff's department, there was a few things that were identified as we met with them and walked through their space. First of all, this admin area, and this is a little bit different than the plans are showing here.
It's one big.
It's one big room. So this is a admin workstation, and then this is a workstation where someone sits. This space here, even though it's next to this customer window, let's call it, is actually a stand-up only station, and no one can actually sit at it. But there's 3 admin staff. So therefore, currently, one of the admin supervisor is in a private office back here. So ideally, they would all be together in this area. And it sounded as if the space could even be opened up a little bit more. Like there's no need for the double security into this admin space, because there's this very secure point right here. And it could be opened up a little bit so you could get all 3 workstations or staff to be able to sit here together and work together and service this window.
So that one office is like highly needed. So one
That's
thing
right,
about
yes.
the sheriff's station, it's kind of growing, or they've got contract deputies. And so this is a department that really needs to grow a little bit. And there's ways we can
Space-wise.
do that within their space.
So instead of giving them more square footage, like Tamara was just saying, we feel if there's reconfiguration that could happen to actually answer some of the needs that they have. Another thing that was identified is they have this big central workroom and storage room here. And this is one of the cases where there's a really big high density file unit here. So maybe in future years that might downsize or even eventually go away. But then this whole area has some really nice storage and built-ins, but then it was meant to be more of a workroom copy room, but it's not really used. So it just sits empty. I mean, they go in there to grab copies and things, but it's very underutilized.
Underutilized. We can rework it and get more.
So there could be maybe even like internal offices built out here and still keep a copy workroom area, just cut down on the size of it. This office in the corner is a shared office for currently 7 deputies. So they have individual, I would call like 3-foot touchdown workstations. So they take their laptop from their car unit and plug it in right at their station to do reporting. It seems pretty efficient.
Yeah.
However, they're all dedicated right now. So they all have a dedicated space.
So not shared. They're not a shared desk. They're a dedicated desk.
And then
Unlike they're all in there.
they're not, as far as the information we receive now. So then again, the one private office being used for the admin, the other offices are, I think, the chief deputy, there's investigator offices, there's some internal interview rooms. However, one of them is actually being used, I think, for two
contract.
shared, contract staff right now. Again, they're trying to make the best use of the space that they have. So they've done a good job, I think, doing that so far. Just there are certain ways that it could definitely be reworked a little bit.
And just for future, we're talking about future, like these things that we would do would benefit the future growth too, so.
Just quickly, we took a tour of the jail. We gathered a little bit of information on that, but we did not spend a lot of time investigating space. There's a current contract right now with Winona County. For some of the jail inmates that when their new building is, I think, finished. I believe that contract is coming to end, so. And then back here in the building is some of the carports and garage spaces as well.
Get evidence processing for the sheriff.
So,
Would it be fair to say in some of that area that there's some underutilized space?
In the jail.
yeah, I mean, yes, I think so, based on the quantity of.
I mean, there's a lot of spaces there. It'd be-
Mhm. So this is one of the major challenges about the whole Justice Center. Is that the spaces that were designed very particularly for their current use. And there's very heavy restrictions on security
Mhm.
and they, can't commingle of
I understand.
spaces.
Yep.
So that, even though spaces might be underutilized, it's very difficult to change the use of them.
Yep.
Good.
Which brings us to the second level. of the
Good
stage.
segue.
Again, you have the elevator, the stairs, so accessibility in this, obviously this new building, that part of this is great. One thing that was identified. And I'm just gonna say that it was addressed or been told to us was the security issues. Sometimes whether court's in session or not in session, there's not always a security aspect you have to go through. When you're entering this building or coming even into the court in session.
Don't they have a mobile security?
There
They
is,
move it in
yes.
They move it in place and
Mhm.
Okay.
Correct. So in general, I can't remember the percentage, but I believe that it's only like 25% of court in session now versus still virtual. And I believe that might be on the judge's preferences and that doesn't mean that it can't change or it might be more in person now as we go into the future. So again, though, if just starting in the middle here in the courtroom spaces, these spaces were, heavily designed for that particular use. And can't necessarily be used for something else. Because
Yeah, with all the built-in things. Privacy.
Looking at the corner area here of office space or court administration, so the front area, there is a public service or customer windows here in the front. And then there is this is the court admin workspace, which does have 6 workstations here. It's nice, it gets the natural light into this space. There's there's some built-ins here. And then this also has a high density storage file unit over here. I think they call it the library, maybe the library.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of open space in this. There's definitely room for growth here if that was the case, or flexibility of this space. And then this entry is a secure entry to the judge's chambers. And then there's also room for a visiting judge as well. And then as we move to the county attorney, again, there's the public waiting customer window here. Now, the clients and public do come, witnesses, I should say, do come into the space and use some of the main conference room, some of the interview rooms. They do also have one room dedicated to virtual court. I believe it was.
They call it the Zoom room.
Yeah, the Zoom room. And then they have a large storage area in the back with that high density storage unit again. And in the front, there's 2 admin stations and then again, I would say more open space that could be higher utilized. Like they have it laid out very nice and very neat, but there's definitely open spaces there that could be used. One of the needs that was possibly identified was it when you have multiple witnesses, you have to have them in separate rooms. They can't always use these rooms out here. They have to be monitored in a monitored area. You'll see in one of our options, we could carve out some of this open space and create another witness room if
Holding, yep,
needed, or
holding
a huddle
witness.
slash room,
Mhm.
huddle room.
That admin space is just for two people. It's very spread out, so.
Those assistant attorney offices in the back,
Mhm.
are they utilized?
There is, yes,
One is,
I think there was one.
I think they have somebody like vacant, but they might come back. But right now, since everything is virtual, they're using them as these Zoom virtual rooms. Is, you know what I mean? And their space kind of adapts to whatever the court does. So if things are more in session, then their stuff kind of moves around. But that's why maybe having more holding rooms for the future, if there's more in person, that's a need that they would have.
Could those? There's an assistant attorney in one of them, could those be used for witness?
That's what she just said.
group?
Yep. Then that, you know, they'd be switched from like a Zoom to an in-person. So
Put the assistant attorney over someplace else.
correct, there's a supply room, you know, a lot of their internal supplies, like all that stuff can all be reworked because people just kind of fill up what they have, but we can really, you know, make more efficient use of those types of internal spaces.
The front room is a bigger conference room, and then the witness services person is in one of these offices as well. And then the correction space, again, that also has some state mandates to it. Very well designed for their particular security needs and space functions. However, not all the staff is there. They're one of the departments that's more offsite and onsite. So that was something throughout. Most of the county departments are actually on work in person and on site the majority of the time, except for a few departments. So,
Yep.
corrections being one of them, surveyor, and then some of the human services. So any other questions on existing space before we get into the fun stuff? Yeah.
Depends on how you look at it.
Exactly. Yeah. Now we're just doing our job, so I'm sorry, everybody.
Okay. We'll just go to it. So our primary focus, well, one thing I want to say, we have 3 different options to share with you today. Again, these are very preliminary drafts. We want you to give us your feedback. We want your interaction here. So one of the primary focuses of looking at this, we've focused a lot on this current building here, the historic courthouse building, how we could co-locate departments as well as taking away some of that duplication of space. From our option 1 to option 3, it's definitely a progression. Option 1 really starts out with very similar square footage for most of the departments. However, we did look at, would it be feasible to move the public health department over to this building? And what spaces are available to take over if we did that? So that was really this option 1. What spaces in this building could we find to and condense that department together? So it's not a 1-for-1. So the square footage that they have in that community services building was around just a little over the actual usable square feet that they're using on the work level, not the storage again, is a little over 3,000. Yep, a little over 3,000 square feet. We can find about a little over 2,000 square feet in this building, just initially looking at not condensing a lot of departments.
And using a lot of their space they already have on this floor.
Correct. So, okay, so this current space here, if you remember from the existing plans, cuts off about right here, and there was that one vault I was talking about that was used strictly for storage next to the mechanical room. So that gained some nice square footage there, or the possibility of maybe opening up that space. The social services space that's currently there actually does a really nice job of having internal offices and keeping open workspace on the Windows side. So it'd be a similar, thought process or idea of that.
Maybe more open workstations versus offices,
Uh,
which their
private
department is open for that. They understand that them to be over here, that's what they would have to go to.
And then in some of these concept options, we are coloring in some of the corridor spaces. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that that department would only have control of that corridor. That's something up for discussion. It's just that there was talk about the secure need, there's secure access points. So where does that happen at? And with the department being across the hall from each other. So part of social services right now is across the hall. They would move over and combine together. Then some of the public health nurses from the community services building could come over into this space. The other thought would be for this department would be that when you come into the building here, they'd focus their clients coming in the west entry. They tell them as they're coming to the building, come to the west entry, you go down a half level. And then as you come around the corner with, great signage, you'd be directed to a new check-in space, new check-in and waiting. So there is a ramp here. So you can, and with these are actually exterior walls of the original courthouse building. So I don't know, is it necessarily we'd want to create like huge openings here as you're coming to this lobby space. But as you come around the corner, there could be a really nice window. And again, like this is missing some of the doors and window type thing, but something that would be open to a nice check-in area.
One check-in for the whole entire department.
Yes, thank you. And then taking over the existing conferencing spaces. But, again, these are internal spaces without windows. So ideally, maybe, what is that? It could be waiting space for some of their clients and families. It could also be, instead of having private offices for everyone, you could have what they call client huddle rooms or client consultation rooms. The WIC programs and like the health education rooms are very clinical spaces. So like those could be internal without windows as well. So that was just some of the initial thoughts. Again, like all of this would need to be dig a little bit deeper in with the department itself.
I'll just say a concern right away that we lose access to restrooms. That's the drawback I see in sending all the folks over there to the upper left-hand corner on the drawing there. Just.
Yep. And you bring up a really good point, and I didn't know how much we want to address it today, but that would be definitely another thing. We're going to do a full quick code review on the building, because I can just initially see that bringing more people into the building too, we're going to be short on restroom counts. And again, interrupt me here because I'm just going to keep moving and then we can, I don't want to. So then I'm going to stick with the public health and human services department. They already have this space on first floor. However, what we gain is that the current check-in is here and waiting and reception. So then that space doesn't need to be duplicated if it was moved to the lower level. So then we can get additional staff within these spaces. And again, like the corridor doesn't necessarily need to be blocked off where we're blocking off restrooms, but just identifying that, if someone doesn't need to be going down this hallway, maybe there's thoughts about that.
Minimize the access type of thing.
Yeah, and they have like their restrooms in their department, and then over to the left, there's restrooms over there. So kind of just less confusion for people that are coming in and finding the correct departments is the idea behind it.
And then to the right side of the plan here, again, not take, not reducing much square footage in this option, but just look at reorganization or getting the auditor and treasurer next to each other, minimizing the storage slightly. And maybe even how some of the private offices are configured. And then having the license center more in this space. And, you know, some possibilities here are even looking at, you know, structurally, could you even have, as you come in this entry, have a customer window? So you'd see that right as you got off the elevator, or right as you came up the stairs. Because again, that license center, not that people aren't coming into some of the other departments, but that definitely has
A higher volume.
yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Currently, a lot of people come to the recorder window, which is right here, and just ask for, you know, where am I supposed to go? For this particular, so this was looking at if the election room wasn't right here, could the recorder space be reconfigured where, you know, they could have better access to this customer window, or even the public records are more in a sight line, so they don't have someone from the public, you know, back in their space. There's no safety concerns with staff and someone being in their space. And that way would allow for more of a multi-purpose conferencing space on this first level, since we took away those large conferencing rooms on the lower level.
And there's no current conference room on this floor, correct? I don't think there was.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Second level, not changing too much other than human resources. So again, public health and human services could be expanded slightly on this floor. And not, you know, not changing too much here, other than maybe some reconfiguration of the finance office. Again, this is a lot of square footage for finance for 2 people. We could certainly look at other locations for that as well. And using, now that we know that this commissioner's room really isn't used that often, we could also look at utilizing that space more. As whether it's conference or whatever we feel the biggest need identified. And then just some slight things here for the assessor and environmental services. Again, as I previously mentioned, if we got that big built-in unit out of this multi-axis printing area, we could create a better flow into environmental services and more privacy for the confidentiality at the printing area. The assessor, you could take out, have more appraisers in workstations versus private offices, minimize that storage that's on the window, but let those windows flow into this open space, so you get some natural light into the space. And they could actually get more people in there as well then.
Better waiting area for the internal.
Where did EDA move to?
That's a great
With-
question with
in
finance.
Finance. So it's a contract and it's
Well, I
a
can see
4-day.
the commissioners,
Yeah, exactly.
commissioners off.
Yeah,
Conference room that's back there, we utilize that quite often, so that. How about the break room thing, is that?
And-
It's 184 square feet there, that has a windows to it,
correct.
are they utilized as much as they used to be? I mean, but I've heard of things changing since COVID, you know, they used to meet and visit, and then they got used to having a microwave and a refrigerator in their own area.
Mhm.
Are break rooms as big a hit anymore or not?
Exactly.
Just a thought.
Yep. Good comments.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, and I think there's 2 ways to look at it. That they're probably not used as much as they maybe were for actual like congregating and communicating. However, I also still see in spaces, if you provide it, they will come. Like if there's a really nice space to go and make your lunch and hang out and get out of your office space for a little bit. I mean, some counties just have the policy, you can't eat at your desks too, so.
I
gonna
just,
go with-
it's unfortunate we've gone that way, because, you know, a lot of co-mingling was important to me. I think it's still important, not happy.
Yes.
refrigerators and microwaves in a lot of offices.
Yeah,
So how does that go over with fire marshal?
a good question.
Yeah.
And they're smaller appliances, so I don't think you're breaking necessarily any fire issues, but
Well, they
some
run
people-
all weekend.
yeah,
There's nobody here on the weekend.
that's true. So to reiterate here on this, for this particular building, the Public Health and Human Services could move the workspaces and the public health services into this building with some reduction of square footage and some combining of that whole department together. And then it was just a minimal reduction to some of the other departments within the building. And then, so then this is what, if you, the county was to keep the community services building, because we still would have veteran services and extension services out of that building. What would you use that space for on that side? So one thought was, would there be a need for more meeting, training spaces you could maybe even rent out to the community, if not being used by the county departments? This is just initial thought, could even,
Like shared office space.
yeah, exactly,
go.
some touchdown shared office space, exactly. Yeah, so that's, I don't know, does anybody have any initial feedback about that? One of our, in our next, or one of our last concepts would be you possibly even, the county would look at even selling this building, and then you have some funding for some of the renovation work too.
That was kind of the plan, I think. Let's work our way here.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the input from the Veteran Services Office?
They,
His location and how his clients like it.
I think they really liked this location. It's accessible, there were some issues with HVAC and like weather conditions
Yeah,
with
we
no
understand. Yeah,
vestibule
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And then again, it was, there were some securities concerns brought up where like you can just see right into the space, but that's not unusual either for public buildings, having that visual.
Yeah.
Into spaces. But the nice thing here is they have that garage space for their mobility van.
Parking
is a
is always
plus.
an issue out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think if some of the public health things move to this campus, then parking would be,
Alleviate some of that.
so,
Mhm.
I mean, there's pros and cons.
You know, There's an extension and veteran services offices out there. Wasted space, you're having open spaces to do this and that is fine, but if that's all we got out there is 2 veteran services, and a couple of extension services people.
Yeah, it's five
Better to
people.
get that building off of ours onto the tax roll. Move them someplace.
Yep.
I,
Move them to this building.
this building, or take the extension off of the fairground. Off of the building, off of the fairground.
But there's that, yeah, that's a good point, what. A lot of waste, or not wasted space that we're trying to grasp for, or, saying, well, what, oh, this might work, but I agree with Bob, that, just the 2 units out there, which have maybe half a dozen employees, unfortunately, if we get to a point where we need to rent a good space, because I feel veteran services should be in an area that's accessible to the wheelchairs and all that stuff. So it'd be tough to have them come into this building, I think, because of course, with the parking lot changing, it might be easier, but that's the service that we need to take care of the handicap and so on.
Having ramps for this building?
Well, there's some of the somebody mentioned that the parking lot change next to that. Is that happening for sure?
Well, we got bids coming in soon,
Okay.
so that's
That's next to the west entry where the elevator.
Yep.
is.
sure hoping. Okay, well, it's just like, I agree with Bob there that all of a sudden we got an awful lot of space if things come
Mhm.
together that. Well, we got two more options in there. too.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh,
The Justice Center too, we can maybe
Make
put-
it smaller. Well, and yeah, to keep, one thing to keep in mind, you know, is a backup, is that, again, there's a lot of storage that needs to be condensed in the whole floor level of this building, and, you know, if you have other buildings, or if you know, you wanted to consider, I know it's not part of this study, but if you wanted to consider the old jail as any type of, you know, offsite store, or I guess it'd be more on-site than storage or any use there. That's always a future thing to consider, not,
brings up a thought, if it's something that's not privacy necessary, it can easily go off campus to something like this and store it, you know, like some of the files are okay, or we keep it just for record, but of course, things that are
Mhm,
security reasons, we definitely don't want to mess with them. My thoughts.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and any of these options too, I think weighing the costs, you know, of having this building or not having it has to be an important aspect of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think at the Justice Center, again, that we talked about, as I was showing you the existing space, but some of the possible reconfiguration that could happen to adapt to the existing space that the sheriff has to accommodate some of that growth needs that they have. And like they're using one of the, I think it's one of the investigations rooms right now, like there's actual staff in there, which, so it can't function as how.
Yeah, it's an
designed
interview
to be.
room. Yep. So they're kind of double purpose and they're doing the best they can.
So we could build out some office space within that open workroom space, reconfiguring this front admin area to get all the 3 staff together there would free up another office over here. So there's definitely ways, you know, small reconfigurations that could happen to make that more efficient and keep everyone together within that department. Another thing to consider, and we slightly mentioned it, and I think one of you brought it up too, or asked the question. Not all the deputies are in there at the same time. Again, I hate to be the person to say that or the bad news, but you don't necessarily have to have a dedicated, you know, they're not all in there at the same time. So the thought about having non-dedicated workstations versus dedicated is an option.
Second floor.
Second floor, we just made some notes. Again, I'll start over here on the county attorneys. There is space within that open office area if the need for that additional witness interviewing space or where the witnesses are waiting to testify. Or could also be a multi-purpose huddle room. It doesn't necessarily have to be accessed from this corridor. I know that's where the existing doorway is. It could be accessed within their space as well.
So when I look at that building. Straight down the hallway, you know, between purple and yellow, there's that white hallway, and then straight down is that empty room. I mean, there's nothing, I can't read what it says on
This one right here,
that one right there.
this is mechanical, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And then this is like a staff only break room area and restrooms here, and then the public restrooms are right here.
And then that pink is like IT,
This
like
is,
security. Yeah, isn't that
I
security?
think this was the security office, but the
Security.
emergency management director or I don't know, I'm sorry if I'm
Well, you're
saying that wrong.
That's
Director.
what Bill used to say.
Yeah, that he is in that office right now. So it's not the security for this level.
I look at like the DOC. Green
Mhm.
is not as big as it used to be. I don't know if it's gonna be bigger or not, but if we talk about moving veteran services, is there a space up there that you can get a couple of reception, the veteran service office upstairs here?
Mhm.
Good elevator access, good access. This would be the building where veteran service, if we move it, we can find a place for them, this would be the place, the building.
We redo the parking lot.
Corrections.
Yeah, parking.
Let me correct these. I just say DOC because I know they're downsizing. on our first spot. Same thing with the administration, they're downsizing. personnel.
Yeah, right in there.
This would be definitely a space, so now they can't commingle.
We're
But-
talking, you're talking green.
Either the green or the administration.
So you're saying if this space was reconfigured, so you could divide it off between corrections and extent or veteran service. Or like this area, again, it would have to be divided somehow with its own entry, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they have a really big open area, produce it and get veteran services, and it's right near the elevator and the restrooms.
That's a building.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
some ideas.
yep,
All right, now we're on to option 2. This option, similar to option 1, it reduces some of the square footages within departments slightly more than the first option. We did move again, all the public health services from the community services building to be moved into this building, still on all 3 levels. However, the biggest difference here would be looking at getting this public health and human services check-in space on first level. Which there are pros and cons to that.
Okay, you're on the first floor.
Yes, sorry, I switched
I was
really
gonna
quick
say,
on you.
yeah, so we're starting on the first.
The
level.
basement wasn't too much different than, the one thing here to point out in the basement was leaving part of the conferencing space.
Yeah.
Again, we'd still examine the storage, this area, how it's being used, you can get that more dedicated to certain departments.
First.
But another thing to think about here, and you'll see it in this option 2 and option 3. There's an existing vault right here, which really makes this very much like more of a skinny corridor type space that you wind around through. Craig in our office, most of you have met down here as well, is a structural engineer. And I had some discussions with him about would it be possible to even take that out? And he said, it is possible. It doesn't go through all 3 levels of the building. There'd probably be some floor infill underneath it, actually. But it might be possible. So the idea of creating, focusing more on the customer windows in this central lobby, more of a central lobby type space. This also flips the recorder over here. And the license center here. So again, I feel like if people are parking here and coming in this west entry, although I like to come in this entry of the building, but if you come in this way and you're using the elevator at all, the first window you see is this window. So looking at the possibility of licensing center there. Combining the auditor and treasurer, getting them right next to each other. And there's, again, slight reduction in their space and then a slight reduction in the recorder space. But giving them more of a customer window and then still having access to those public records within those space. Again, it's just relaying out, how is the space laid out? And
The biggest thing
reconfigured
about that is the license center versus auditor treasurer's
Yes.
office,
further apart.
that they cross over.
Helping each other out at times.
Yeah,
I like the
exactly.
open concept there, coming in right away at the entrance.
Yep.
So let's face it, these are some of the 3 hottest or most used.
Mhm.
DMV. DMV is right there, and you got the public health, and then, the auditor treasurer, those are the ones who people mostly come to this building for.
Mhm.
I had a question for Carol. We use the basement for the Minnesota driver's license testing and whatnot. Do we got a space for that?
There would have to be one.
Mhm.
We're obligated to have that.
They lease, well, they pay us.
Yeah.
And I don't think that.
But they were in the basement, so
Mhm.
I don't see them on any of the plans, so we'd have to figure a place.
Well,
Did get-
option two had that they're in the basement, 500 square foot conference room be.
You could still do the testing in that room.
In that
Yeah.
room there, option two, I don't, you got that in front of you, Bob?
Yeah.
We
it's
could
right here.
flip back to that.
Got the old
Okay,
motion.
okay.
So,
They, instead of using it all, they'd be using.
and instead of the whole room. down-
'Cause they're only here on Thursdays.
Right. But it did, take that in consideration at this point.
Okay, thank you. Which option and which floor are we on?
First floor still.
Yep, sorry.
IT doesn't move in any of the options. This, a little more square footage for public health and human services here. One of the drawbacks could actually be all of the people coming in for public health and human services at the same area of, the recorder, auditor, treasurer, license center. So that could be actually a con versus a pro too. Then against second floor, not too many changes. HR could probably stay where they are, not as much space need as they this you have. Public health and human services, I meant, could probably stay within the existing space they have on second. Some of the similar changes to the assessor and environmental services. This isn't too much different from the other option. Really want to get into here, option 3.
Basement option three.
So option 3 took a little different strategy here. What if we tried to get everyone out of the community services building and really look at reducing space for almost every department? And then also for public health and human services, only on 2 floors of this building. And then really looking at the tax and land services, all of them, even environmental services, the assessor, getting them all on one level together. So you'll see on the first floor. We've done that. And then, like I said, we move everyone out. So one of the reductions in space is to the auditor and treasurer, the recorder slightly too. So I think some of this storage space on this level
Yeah.
would definitely need to be dedicated to their departments.
Correct.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah, we're
right.
putting it, their storage downstairs versus within their space.
So this is the biggest change and leaps here. Go ahead.
Basement auditor. That's just.
It's storage.
Storage, sorry.
Some departments have a lot of storage and
Yeah.
just redo some, we're gonna get it down there. Yes.
Storage, yes.
Thank you.
Nobody gets to work in a vault.
Get that one open. We can.
Yeah.
Before I go off this, again, this would be more of the concept of the lower level check-in here. So keeping that check-in for public health and human services separated from the tax and land services, public areas. So first floor, and not to confuse you even more, but because of that idea of the license center and auditor treasurer needing to be like next to each other, we have a 3A and a 3B. So I just want you to not get too far ahead of ourselves, but we did think about that.
Yeah.
So the first thought was, okay, how could we get the assessor and environmental services, all together on this first floor with the auditor, treasurer, recorder, license center. Again, there's some big reductions in space here. We're not trying to hide that necessarily, but we do think it's possible. I mean, there are ways, but it's definitely reconfiguring space. It's not just taking it as it is and moving people around. But again, creating that service window lobby area where you could have, again, enhancing that customer experience. And then if anybody did have to go to multiple departments, they're not going up and down levels. It's all on that first floor.
I like that idea.
The assessor is a little bit further away, however. The reasoning behind that was this existed underneath here, you can see this wall configuration. That's existing walls and they have the assessor and then the 4 appraisers in the private offices. So this space just laid out really nice for them.
Yeah.
Would be one thought about having their office space a little bit further away from the rest of the tax and land services. But you can see here, it also freed up by moving the human services off of this first floor. It freed up space for human resources, finance department, extension office to move over, and veteran services. And then there'd be a couple of new shared spaces with a multi print area, copy area, a smaller conference room space, so extension office also could use that, or HR, depending on how many people are taking the testing for the licensing, we could look at some of the different conference room spaces in the
In the
building.
lower left corner too, that could be a multi-use.
Mhm. So, and just, I'd love to show you 3B, just the difference, and then we can spend some time discussing this if you'd like. So this one looked at flipping the auditor treasurer right next to the licensing center here, but maybe minimizing the actual space that the license center has and build out customer windows. So those works, the actual window stations are right to the hall. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And then trying to still get a little bit more space for the auditor treasurer. And then giving them that lower level storage space. But then it moves environmental services over here next to the recorder. And then this side of the building is pretty much similar.
In that license center deal. And if we didn't have to go into the room right now, if you go into the room, they can 3 or 4 folks at the same time. Same station. If we're at the window only, how many can we take care of at the same time?
That's a good question. I think we'd have to look at it a little closer, but we could get two window stations and then you'd have to come in probably to get your photo taken. Or we'd have to create that photo
Another
area.
area.
Mhm.
You gotta have the area where you can test your eyes, take your picture.
So it'd be like
I
a
mean, you
small,
can L shaped here or something.
yeah.
A lot of-
Mhm. Without getting too far into the design details of it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it just pops in my mind, because you know, if you go into get license plates now, you have 3
Yep.
people getting the plates at the same time. A lot of places is real quick, you know,
Mhm.
just give me the sticker. Sometimes it's prolonged because it's a
Well,
new
usually
registration.
They only let 2 in at any,
Yeah, because there's only 2 staff.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
they only let
Yeah.
2 in any.
So there's 2 points.
but there are 3 windows right now.
Right. but they
There's just that
utilize them.
hunter license section that 2 people still have to kind of go back and forth to it.
Okay. I guess I was just gonna make a comment.
Yeah.
You know, in future plans like this,
Mhm.
you know, I can see we were flipping back and forth. If we'd say, okay, this is basement, current basement, option 1, option 2, option 3, that's a packet. So, because we were flopping
Oh.
back and forth, you know, trying
Yeah.
to see comparisons.
We're just trying to take this all in now and go home and unstaple it and do that.
But that was one. I got figured.
Yeah, I knew that's.
You almost needed like you got a basement, first, second floor, because they roll together.
I thought about putting all 3 floors on one plan and then going to the bigger ones. I mean, it's a lot of flipping still. There's no easy way
No.
without zooming in sometimes.
Mhm.
Certain spaces, so.
Yes, yeah.
We can also send this to the commissioners electronically so that you can zoom in. See some of the print and everything.
Yeah. A little harder on this.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, you need it.
It's pretty long.
I'm old school.
But
Go home, put on your big TV.
again, so that like, that's, I can show you the second floor also, but, you know, the reduction of space, it's not always easy, you know, can it be achieved with some reconfiguration of space? Yes, and make spaces more efficient. But it's not it's not like it's a one-step process. It would need to, we need to work
Phase.
through, yeah, exactly.
Phases, steps.
And getting, and we still would have the storage issue, so we can get the people out of the community services building. We still have the storage space issue. And then just, I think we're getting to the end of our time here, so the second floor, again, really public health and human services. We still could have this as a shared conference room, this huddle rooms conference space here. And then one of the other things looking at on this floor, if the other, like, finance moved on, is actually creating more of a kitchenette break room. There is a restroom in this space back behind us too, for employee use, staff and employee use. And then a few more breakout spaces on this second level here.
Some of these reduced square footage for some departments. And as we look at departments and going electronic on a lot of things, the filing cabinets that are utilizing, taking space right now would not be as needed. Is that fair? We kind of think about, and then maybe staffing would change as we go through with the electronic stuff. This is about my pay grade, because I'm not gonna be here for electronic stuff, I'll tell you that, but I like paper, but that's just something to think about, that I don't want to reduce spaces if it's needed. I was looking at a couple of them just quickly when I was flipping from option 1, option 2, option 3. Some of the space actually be increased slightly because of the room they're gonna project going into. So I saw one that increased by 3 feet, one was by more. I think that's, and again, we're in preliminary right now. Thoughts, I guess, get back to you.
You got good ideas, you.
Especially with some of this building here, we don't want to be taking down sport balls or anything like that and do whatever. We can't go any larger, so we have to make it available. And I think the privacy thing, especially in public health, is going to be something that's important. Talk about that child-friendly interview room and stuff like that. So there are certain areas you got to be real cautious of, and others are less sensitive. Like that.
Something that would be helpful for us is if you want us to focus on a certain option or one or two of them, and you can take some time and think about it.
Well,
Get
I was
back.
gonna say, do you want that today?
Mhm.
I mean, should we have another meeting or what?
So we can do it either way. We could have another meeting where we did like a Zoom call and you guys could
Right.
collect your feedback together and give us some more feedback, which might be the nicest way to do it.
Yeah.
Or you guys can just do it internally and then somehow email us or call,
Okay.
get back to us with some feedback. To keep the study moving, it'd be nice to have, I don't know what your timing is, but
We
if
have
we-
a work group
Yeah,
next
you have-
week that this would be as much to put on that agenda.
And that would be great. I'm gonna be out of town next Tuesday, so it was my fault. We couldn't come next Tuesday, but, yeah, if you guys could take some of that meeting and then get feedback to us after that, or if we need to set up a, like a Zoom meeting would be great.
Give us more time to look at these and understand them.
And if you need any additional information in the meantime, like some of these I noticed, and it might be in the transferring of creating the PDF, like some of those walls and doors got missing, so I can even re-email Tess a cleaner version. But yeah, you can compare and
Yep.
make notes on them and.
It's fine.
But yeah, so that would be one thing to think about, like what you want us to focus on moving forward. Or if you want us to come to one conclusion for a proposed option that goes into the report,
Mhm.
or you can keep multiple options in there as well.
Well, our main focus was to get out of the Meyer building, correct?
Start,
Yeah, and then we could maybe sell that and take the money from that to fix up this building.
Correct.
Oh, go ahead, Beth, I'm sorry.
Appropriate, so long as you weren't going to file individual commissioners who have a specific question. without seeing everybody else. In formulating your thought, just have that.
Individually, yeah.
One of the things,
Thinking about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of information that we didn't want to share with you either, because it's very overwhelming, so.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of ideas you're thinking that we're thinking,
you did a
but
good job with the overwhelm here.
we already put a lot on you, so.
I guess, this is the first time it's being seen by anybody. How about the department heads? Have they had an opportunity to peruse it and?
Well,
They have not. They have, so our process so far, we met with, like I mentioned earlier, we provided questions to each department head, and it was their choice whether they wanted to include any of their staff with or not. And then we met with them virtually and answered, all their questions. They answered questions for us. Then we sent back to each of them a summary of that information. So they have seen that, kind of our conclusions or summary, but they haven't seen, and no one has seen any of these.
And we didn't have any square footage at that time factored into what we
That's
sent
true.
them. It was just more of how do you use your space? How do the clients use your space? How do you feel about your space? That type of thing.
Robert?
So with regard to public health and human services, all the different floors.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of open space. Are you looking at doing? I mean, there's a lot of people involved with this. Are we putting in temporary, the shorter walls to separate people so they got a hubby of their own? Really one big open room. Are we
Mhm.
talking?
Could be a little bit of both,
Yeah.
We
I-
gotta figure that out a little bit more into detail.
I think that's something to be examined, but I know that other county human services and public health departments definitely have went to some of the models of more of an open workstations, and then they have these client consultation rooms that are used if it's in person or virtual sometimes too, and some of them are dedicated to just strict virtual visits, so.
So like, Andy, the IT guy, I mean, is he gonna be able to get wiring to all this new re-advancing that you guys are talking
Oh,
about?
Andy left.
Yeah.
Any of the wiring within the county campus here was an issue. There was mention that there's extra expense to go out further
For
off
that,
campus.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, it didn't sound like it was an issue.
Well, that's good. I mean, we thought.
I think, were you guys having some updates done in this room, or did they happen already IT wise?
Still in the works. Still in the works here, yeah. The question was, Andy, about
Oh, yeah.
any wiring issues
If there's
within the
reconfiguration.
building.
Yeah, there's always.
I don't know how else to expand on that other than yes.
I just said it would be no problem, Andy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I asked you because we're switching a lot of the apartments around. Well, they have to be able to hook up too, especially with the.
The other building actually would. Okay, I'm sorry, but that conversation. Yes, wiring issues in this building more so than any other building.
Because of the
Building.
historic
Yeah,
walls.
because the building.
So it's more of a challenge.
A challenge, but not
Challenge.
over.
Yeah,
No, I mean, there's plenty of room, the ceilings, I mean, there's large gaps, I mean, there's ways to pull wire. It's not, I should say it.
It's not
a challenge,
impossible.
But it's not.
Yeah.
it's feasible.
And you have access to all the spaces right now, though, correct? IT wise?
I mean, yeah. Kind of being dirty. you know,
Not
just in
ideal.
Spaces, but yeah. For the most part.
Right.
Kind of a large one, I'm reading the preliminary draft space program, it looks like there's.
Oh, it could be overall with each department.
Yeah, so departments are estimating.
Over the next 5 years.
Over 5 to 10 years could be like 1%. I think maybe 1 or 2 is a little bit misleading because they don't have a person, but then they're gonna hire a person, so they may be down 1 person, but then they're gonna hire a person, somebody. So
Yeah, that has.
again, we can relook into that a little bit more.
when we put departments together.
Again, those are other, futuristic things, but, I think we need to, look this over a little closer. There's a lot of information in a short period of time. Be part of our discussion next Tuesday at the work group. To, see which way we want to lean. I do feel that our department heads at least should be aware of it so that they aren't blind but sign it. They say, well, yeah,
Right.
we could work that out. Maybe they have a preference. Can we do preference one for one department or option one for one department and still mix it with option 3 for this other department? I mean, maybe,
Mhm.
you know,
Sometimes
they'll
that works.
suggest. I'm just looking at, they know the department, what they need better than us.
Mhm.
And you have the insights because of what the information you receive. But I think.
Oh, we gotta remember change is hard too, so.
Yeah.
We're gonna, we may run into some resistance to, sure.
Yep.
And it goes to what you were talking about phase two, it isn't gonna just.
Right,
happen.
Yeah,
Right.
it has to be set up that we don't lose our operations.
Correct.
So a little bit at a time. Any other questions? So I guess we'll have our homework between now and next Tuesday to see if there's something we can.
Well, we could look this over and comb through it, and we could contact you with individually to ask questions if we have questions.
Yes.
Right?
That sounds great.
Are you gonna send us a packet with each floor, with all 3 options on each floor?
Would that be helpful? Because
Yes,
we
I
can
think it
certainly
would.
do that.
That'd be helpful.
Might be a small, it'd be easier on the like on your computer screen, you can zoom in. On paper, I don't think you'd be able to read it very much, but.
I mean,
But I
this-
think the thing is, it's like if we had, like we were going option 1, all 3 floors,
Yeah, you can
But if
have
we
it
had-
right in front of you.
the basement. Now, option 1, option 2, option 3, basement together, so we just boom, boom, boom. Without going all the way back to what is it now? And then by the time we got to option 3, we had several pages. That's all I was saying.
But you gotta be able to correlate one basement first, second, because you can't take basement first. Option 2, set first floor, option 3, third floor, because
They have to.
they don't correlate that.
Yeah, we could
It's
put
gotta
all
go.
option 1, all 3 plans together, option 2, all 3 plans together, option 4, and then the same thing with the 16, all 3, you know what I mean? So you got boom, 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 and then you can lay them out.
If that works for you, it works for me.
Can we have that done? Also have it done?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep,
Yep.
and then
We'll do that by.
we can do the summary too. You can send you a summary, so it's larger, so you can read it a little bit better. That's helpful.
Any other questions? Thank you for the travel down.
No
Yes.
problem.
Now you get to travel in the rain home.
I know.
Well, no, you thought-
No,
It was a beautiful drive down.
Thank
you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy Valentine's Day on it.
yeah.
Did somebody stop me there? I was trying to end my share, but. I don't know, Andy. Oh, there we go. Now it's back up.
So were you planning on moving?
And maybe you'll copy that up
What's been the plan?
if you want to make more.
Perfect.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, anything else to add, Allison or? Okay. Motion to adjourn, is there a second? Shouldn't be any discussion, all in favor, say yeah. Yeah.
That was a nice